listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your resource to better understand and execute successful podcast ad campaigns. Hello and welcome to the Podcast Advertising Playbook. I'm your host, Heather Osgood. Today, I am joined by Jason Fishman. He is the co-founder and CEO of digital niche agency, DNA. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Heather. Excited to be here.
So, Jason, you've been in the advertising and agency world for a very long time. What kind of prompted you to get into the industry?
Sure. I started my career back in 2008, marketer, working for an agency. Actually grew up here in Southern California and was brought in as an action sports consultant. So working on brands that touch skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding. Only so many of those accounts at the first agency, and that evolved into Gen Y, millennial-focused accounts, campaigns. Went to a different agency, doing the same thing, coming up with the creative, the new business concepts, strategies, and eventually moved to a social gaming startup and was part of capital raise over there. Also merged with an advertising sales firm. And the founder had an exit in the mid-90s, $110 million. I wanted to learn everything I could about advertising from him.
Sure.
And it was to power the social games we were building. We were building an average revenue per user models, very calculated of how much we were buying traffic, how that traffic was converting into users of the game, what that meant for the lifetime value. I was fascinated. And when that merge took place, I hopped over there, built out a mobile advertising network with the founder directly, and started working with Fortune 500s, campaigns of all different sizes, budget levels, timelines, got a good feel it worked, didn't work. I had a lot of fun doing it, but wanted to get back into the startup space, which is when I created DNA. So I came with this mobile ad network background, started taking that type of approach, but full stack towards startup to mid-market clients. And now at DNA, I've worked with over 900 brands. I could talk about the different initiatives and how the direct response results are measured for our clientele. But I am an advertising guy. I'm constantly talking about algorithms and traffic and metrics and return on ad spend. And it's where the majority of my day is spent.
Nice. Don't we all love that? It is really fascinating. And so obviously your agency has niche in the title. So is there a specific niche that you specialize in working with?
Yes. We started with different niches as an agency and kind of shifted with the market. Basically, we found capital raising to be a common theme among our clientele, working with startup to mid-market clients. Whether we're working on the marketing section of their business plan, pitch deck, first campaign that once successful is going to be scaled by their investors. It was always brought up in the discussion. I was even being asked to speak with investors on behalf of our clients. And at that time, I was introduced to Regulation D 506C, which is a law that allows for solicitation of accredited investors, high net worth individuals. So I said, hey, with my data partnerships from the ad world, I can target people by net worth, by household income. I could filter by their digital behavior, their interests, what they're doing online. We ran a campaign towards accredited investors using programmatic ads, display banners, native content, sponsored content placements. Saw success. First campaign raised 2.83 million, and on a light ad spend at that. Think about return on ad spends for e-com and even for some B2B SaaS lead gen type campaigns, and then seeing those types of numbers show up on an ad report. We were very excited. We were then introduced to more issuers, companies that were issuing shares to investors, and it basically became something we fell into. In many cases, it's shorter term clientele, oftentimes smaller budgets that then scale up as the performance is there. But I mentioned we've worked on over 900 campaigns. Over 500 of those at this point have been capital raising. And the laws opened up further too. So in 2016, regulation crowdfunding, Reg CF went into effect. We began working on Regulation A Plus deals that year as well too. Reg CF today, you can raise up to 5 million from both accredited and retail investors, any adult. On Regulation A Plus, up to 75 million. So much larger companies can use that. We've worked on multiple deals this year that have raised over 50 million using Regulation A plus, and advertising is the primary driver. So we're
Mhm.
talking about the return on ad spend for these investments. And I've built my own first party audience databases at this point. We'll work with groups post fundraising towards their go to market, towards their e-com, user acquisition, lead gen type campaigns. But we've become well known for investor acquisition.
Mhm. That is so fascinating. I love that that is the area that you've decided to focus on. And, I mean, I think that what is so fascinating in this advertising landscape that we're in today is that you as an agency are able to consult with an investor and say, based on your experiences and the track record that you have, that if you take a product like this and you do X, Y, and Z, you are fairly certain that you're going to generate a certain amount of income. And at the end of the day, isn't that the point of marketing, period, right? Is to make sure that we can take action that's going to result in the acquisition of new customers. So that's pretty fascinating.
It absolutely is. And there's misconceptions around it. If
Sure.
they're if there's a founder and they're speaking to a portal, one of the marketplaces that these campaigns are featured on, listed on, they're probably working with the lawyer, they're working with the CPA, and not the same marketing discussion they're going to get from an agency, an ad network. So they may think, hey, j just by putting my deal online, I'm going to reach a billion people. I mean, everyone's
Sure.
on the internet. We're going to raise a successful round. The stats show otherwise. About half of the groups that use these types of filings are pretty stagnant. On Reg CF, half of the campaigns won't raise over $114,000 statistically. Only the top 7% raise a million or more. Happy to say we work with many of those, and it's because of the perspective we provide around traffic. They may need 50,000 visits to their offering page per $2 million raised. If they're getting a 2% conversion rate, 1,000 investments off of that, $2,000 average per investment each, which is what we're seeing on the Reg CF campaigns these days. It's lots of little investors. The Reg
Mm.
D's much different. That's more of a
Uh-huh. Sure.
125K average investment. So I then talk to them about traffic sources via advertising and the audiences and really bring it to life for them. And I find that they're often surprised when I'm breaking this down as a digital marketing exercise.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I find difficult is that we at True Native Media are selling advertising, podcast ads to
Mhm.
brands, direct brands. And of course, we work with lots of agencies too. But it's very common, I would say, for especially a brand when we're working with them directly to come to us. And I really just don't feel like they have a good overall strategy. They have, number one, often poor websites, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to try to sell this product, but when I go to your website, it's not a great site and it doesn't convince me to want to buy your product. There's too many calls to action all over the place. So it's very cluttered and it's difficult for me to know as a consumer where should I go and how should I take action with all of this. Creating a solid marketing strategy has so many elements to it. And at the end of the day, strong advertising plays a huge role in being able to drive traffic and conversions. But the actual transaction piece of the pie, and obviously every company is different, right? If we're talking about, D2C type online brands, and there's a million different renditions of different products, but the whole company has to be operated well to position consumers to be able to purchase the product. And I guess I'm just curious because in I'm sure many instances you're there saying, we can make this happen, but you're in control of this much when there's probably this much that needs to be controlled. How do you approach that? Or is it your goal to try and control as many aspects as possible so you can get them to profitability?
It's such a great point, and it's a conversation I'm in constantly. I talk about these numbers, performance metrics, return on ad spend numbers, 10x. I have case studies where it's much higher, clients, referral partners. we'll kind of lean on that of, hey, we want that level
Right.
of result. We want that direct response. And I look at what they're doing and say, okay, you really need a good content marketing funnel first, the right
Uh-huh.
environment to drive this traffic into. Your offering page is lacking social proof, the imagery, the design doesn't really reflect the valuation you put into your filing, into your offering. Are you open to doing a new offering page? Could we put a new site together here that's set up to produce a higher conversion rate? I mean, hey, conversion rate optimization should be a never-ending exercise.
Sure.
Even, decimals of a lift of a percentage for a conversion rate can mean the world of difference to the results. And I find some groups with a limited marketing experience will be hesitant towards that. Hey, we just want results. We just want traffic.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to do this. I found it at the Mobile Ad Network as well too, and
Sure.
looking at campaigns and thinking different areas were lacking, and we were just working, like you said, on that one piece on the advertising. But part of why I started an agency because I wanted to work on multiple aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Strategy. It's a broad word. There's a lot of different approaches towards it. I've built a model called the 8 point plan. I've written about it. We have checklists, run workshops on it. We're generally doing it over the course of a month, but many groups are resistant towards it. I don't know if it's AI and then thoughts of, hey, I could put together a strategy really quick. I don't need this plan mapped out. But for me, it's more about the process,
Mm-hmm.
asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a deep dive on the competitor marketing audit and really understanding what the audience is going to see in addition to the campaign, and then determining the target audience variants we want to go after, the marketing channels, the creative that go in, projections, even just aligning on the projections, the impressions, the
Mm-hmm.
clicks, conversions, associated metrics around it can mean the world of difference for what a campaign looks like a few weeks in.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And I mean, obviously, it sounds like you have a very buttoned up process that you've created for people to achieve success. Do you think that it's one thing? Is it content? Is it social proof, paid ads? Is it community building? Like, is there a piece that is more important? Or is it just part of the steps that the foundation needs to be created this way and then you move to the next step and the next step? Like, what does that look like?
Sure. Sure, there's a bit of a formula
Sure.
for a capital raise, for a crowd sale. You need to be able to show some traction uh, via capital raised, total investor account. This is usually a forward-facing number on the offering page. So I mentioned the median, half of the campaigns don't do extraordinarily well. Very true with offline capital raises to angel investors and VCs as well. I think it's about 5% of the deals or less that get funded. So you have a lot of companies that are not successful at this. If you are bringing that first 100K, first 250, if it's a Regulation A plus campaign that's set up to raise 50 million, that first million from your first degree network, friends, family, email list, social followers, people you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, meeting on a day-to-day basis, explaining why you're using a crowd sale format, how they operate, how important it is to have movement at the beginning. I would say without this, these raises are somewhat dead in the water. We could drive
Hmm.
all the traffic in the world to it with advertising. If there's $0 raised,
Hmm.
pretty hard to establish trust from a cold audience. First degree network, they may already be enrolled in what you're doing or just want to see you succeed, and they could come in at small amounts on a Reg CF for Regulation A plus campaign. It may be a $500 minimum investment, a $500 conversion. Really talking more e-commerce in that scenario. So being able to bring those people there first. You mentioned social proof, third party validation. Yes, people don't believe what they see online. Uh, Reversely, if there's headline worthy updates on a weekly basis and from trusted third parties, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., podcasts, if every week the founder's featured on a new
Mm-hmm.
podcast,
Mm-hmm.
speaking at a different event, mid-tier publisher and endemic very, industry specific publishers, just the fact that it feels that everyone is talking about this company, for this type of initiative, this investment opportunity makes the world of difference. That's why the top 10% of issuers, I say, raise all the funds. They're the ones with the spotlight on it. It's the empty restaurant sensation with $0 raised.
Hmm.
It's the line around the block as there's millions of dollars coming through.
Right.
And then having enough traffic at a high enough conversion rate. So
Right.
strong enough advertising, traffic sources, maybe some outreach in there, speaking with folks offline and having them come in at larger amounts, but a steady flow with the advertising, which is very scalable, of course,
Hmm.
and then a solid, well-oiled machine of a content marketing program, so you know you're being intentional about what
Hmm.
audiences see when they're searching around and doing their due diligence. It's going to be multiple touch points before they convert, and you
Hmm.
really want to do everything you can to get the right conversion rate.
Hmm. How often do you think a company succeeds because of the product? And how often do you think a company succeeds simply because they do the marketing and position themselves well?
Well, it's definitely a blend of both. I hate to say it, but I think if the marketing's done in a stronger fashion, it has a stronger likelihood of
Hmm.
success than if it's a good product, but not doing enough marketing, not getting
Hmm.
enough traffic. I learned this early in my career working in the Los Angeles startup space as well too. There were amazing products with very few eyeballs around them. Then I saw, you know, mediocre, marginal types of offerings, but just with great marketing, consistent marketing around them. I think that's why I was driven to advertising so much because
Hmm.
when I first learned about arbitrage and traffic funnels, it was around the social games
Hmm.
and was basically told, you can open the floodgates. You could drive as many people as you want and target it at that
Hmm.
very specific individuals of digital advertising. So knowing there are these great companies, great products that people didn't really talk about, uh, that seems like a powerful tool to me.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I know that everyone asks this question constantly, but it has to be asked. How is AI going to change like the way an agency operates, the way advertising operates? I mean, I just keep thinking that I'm old enough that I remember when the internet was invented, which makes me feel like I should be 1,000 years old. But it really did change things so much. And in my early sales days, I went around to the clients that I sold ads to and said, "You need a website." And they said, "No, I don't." And I said, "Yes, you do." And I feel like what the internet did to business and to our world is nothing in comparison to what AI is going to do. I mean, I'm sure that you have listened and read the same things that we all have, but I feel like AI is coming and obviously is here, but like it's coming in a more substantial way in a very quick fashion. And I guess I'm just really curious what your take is on how it's going to impact us.
Sure. I've always been somewhat of a futurist. I actually would have assumed different tech would have moved, evolved quicker. I definitely get that sensation with AI of, wow, this is happening and quicker than I imagined. The past few years, the adoption rate, and from business owners, marketers of all different backgrounds, ages, I have people telling me they could run the ads, build the strategy, do the ad creative with AI. I think for me, I could imagine the need for stronger expertise and strategy,
Hmm.
and then more ability to create more content, advertisements, distribute to more people at a more accelerated rate with AI, with these tools. But
Sure.
it's all about matter of who's behind the wheel,
Hmm.
right? If I'll take a stab at lawyers. My wife's a lawyer. My general counsel laughs when I do this. But if a lawyer puts together a marketing plan and says, "Hey, this is what you're going to do for advertising, and here are the channels you're going to run," and I pulled some CPMs for some podcast placements, some audio placements, digital audio placements. It looks good, run this. I'm going to be able to look at that marketing plan and see a
All
list
the
of
holes.
holes.
Yeah.
And it's not just, hey, you got this document wrong. If you run that out as a campaign, you're going to be losing time, you're going to be losing money, or if you make simple corrections to, experts, people who are working on these campaigns day in, day out, you're going to have a far greater likelihood of success and with the allotted resources. I speak at different entrepreneur centers and with different accelerators, even with VCs and investment banks we work with, looking at some of their portfolio companies and the marketing campaigns. You can even see, like, hey, here's an M dash. This was created with AI. This feels too long. Do they really understand this? Let me ask them a few questions. For me, anytime I'm looking at a pitch deck, it's like, hey, how are you going to get users? How are you going to
Right.
get customers? And I'll look at the marketing section and realize, hey, this is subpar. And these days, even this was created with AI. So it's all a matter of who's behind the wheel.
Mhm.
If I'm doing data analysis on a variety of campaigns, a variety of different creative studies based on billions of ad impressions and aggregating the data and then being able to make projections, models from that, it's going to be a lot different. And I know for everyone's field, for everyone's area of media buying or marketing or whatever it may be, if you're bringing the right individual with enough experience there, what you could do with these tools is far more impactful. I like to say internally, it has to be better than human if we're using it. I'm not as interested in shortcuts for my team.
Mhm.
My clients don't care about it as much as they do quality.
Right.
It's all about what we're
Right.
putting out and then more importantly, the results it produces. If we did
Right.
it quicker, doesn't really matter unless, hey,
Mhm.
we're doing far more articles. It's going to be distributed far more places. This is what it's going to mean for rankings and results and shareability, relevancy, a few weeks, few months down the line. But I'm very selective on what we use AI for. And I would like to say that good AI usage, you can't tell it was AI that put it together.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. I think that we should make a public service announcement that if you send out anything with an M dash in it, everyone knows that you got it from ChatGPT. So just take a few minutes to go through and remove those. It's really not that hard. It cracks me up. I'm like, no one wrote with M dashes before. I mean, you might see one very rarely. And now it's like they're all over the place. And you're like, okay, people, it's not that difficult for us to figure this out, right? Cracks me up. But
I got an email the other day about an agreement, and it was scrolling just long and with M dashes all the way through. Hey, this is what we think about this section, that section. And I got on the phone with the prospect. I said, hey, what did you feel about this area there? And they had no clue what I was talking about. It was simply, I uploaded this agreement to AI. This is what AI said back. You guys figure it out. And I don't know. When we're looking at advertising creative, it's definitely a sense of laziness. If we're looking at
yeah,
an ad somewhere or listening to an ad, and you could tell this is AI.
right,
So
right.
the right AI usage, I think there is going to be a need for humans and experts and
Mhm.
professionals for
Mhm.
longer than we
Mhm.
think, but we're going to be doing things in more sophisticated, more streamlined ways.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So I'm curious, how much ad buying in the podcast space are you guys doing? Are you buying a lot of podcast ads?
It's definitely part of the marketing mix for us.
Okay.
We're generally market testing with Meta in the sense that some of these groups are not actively advertising before their capital raise. Others are, and they're doing
Hmm.
very well and spending, six figures, seven figures a month on various different channels. But with some of our clients, it's their first advertising campaign. So if we go to a place like Meta and we're A/B testing different audiences, creatives, and funnels, we then want to take it to other advertising channels from there. This could
Hmm.
include search engines. This could include programmatic networks. That's where I first started buying audio ads, is on
Sure.
programmatic networks, and found mid funnel could be very strong. I would
Hmm.
see a lift in conversion rate.
Hmm.
Even looking at some of the CPMs, it was definitely a good place to access premium inventory. Then we started doing publisher direct buys, and for capital raise campaign, financial email newsletters can do very well. And then there's coinciding podcasts. We actually got into the world of podcast outreach as well too, because we found if our clients are on podcasts, it's very measurable, is that there's an impact to their campaign, whether we're
Mhm.
using the visuals in video ads and different creative segments there, featuring it on the content marketing, even for their offline discussions, just being able to say they're on these different podcasts. And while doing that, we get presented with different opportunities. Hey, you can do this media buy with us. This is
Mhm.
what it looks like, pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. This is what it looks like with, podcaster reading a script, depending on the platform, Spotify as an entry point, different visuals and display banners and different segments there. At the end of the day, it has to fit into that larger marketing strategy, like we were
Mhm.
talking about there, Heather. And I use the word premium inventory. It's definitely how I refer to it. I'm a
Excellent.
big podcast fan, not just
Mhm.
on these, and have my own podcast as well, Test Optimize Scale, and have over 200 episodes there. And I'm very closely connected to the analytics and what gets us more visibility. So to give that option, to give that ability to a founder and say, hey, you could show up on these podcasts as a guest, you could show up as an advertiser and consistently. This is
Mhm.
multiple touch points, not just one, guest appearance. How do you have a consistent grasp on that audience? And the advertising, the media buying is something we found to be effective there.
Mhm. That's excellent. I love that you refer to it as premium content because, one of the things that we always talk about is the engagement level with audio is extremely high. And I think that that's why you do see such success with guesting, with purchasing ads, because the audience is there in a very intentional way and they want to be there. They're going to listen to 80% of the episode. So I just feel like in this, this short attention span culture that we have built, that podcasts allow us to really open up and connect with an audience in such a unique way. And it sounds like you've really found that through your strategies.
Hmm. Absolutely. It amazes me with my podcast audience how they're able to recall something from minute 20, minute 38 of a podcast recording, and even episodes that are a few years back at that.
Mhm.
Again, I'm a fan. I typically have a podcast on YouTube in the background if I'm cranking out emails at the end of the day. And I'll push through a 3 hour episode for some of the podcasts that I listen
Mhm.
to. I always have one in queue. And my clients find the same thing where they're getting people to reach out to them when they're a guest and referencing certain aspects of it. I see it on their inquiries. I've even seen it on comments on social posts where it's featuring the podcast. So those metrics that you're speaking to, the completion rates, how many people are getting in depth on this long form content is definitely a standout to me and across other media sources. I always read studies on the effect of podcasts and for different types of campaigns over the past few years, even political campaigns, and what
Mhm.
type of a role that this medium, this channel is playing. So the ability to buy that mind share, to be ability to buy that inventory for us as a standout in 2025 here has been a big part of the discussion for us as a whole.
Mhm. That's awesome. So, what inspired you to start your podcast?
I was approached by a podcast producer.
Oh,
I was
nice.
actually hesitant towards it at first. I was speaking at a lot of conferences, investor marketing. We've worked on Web3 campaigns and other types of initiatives that are more global. And I've spoken at conferences in 7 countries. I was really on the circuit for a while there
Mhm.
and was approached saying, hey, you should do this over a podcast. And mapped out a show title, a theme, a reoccurring format, who the audience is, the value that they get from it, thumbnail, opening music, everything. Recorded my first 5 episodes in person right before COVID and was a little
Mm.
hesitant to get them out, delayed it
Mhm.
by a month or so there, and finally started distributing, got a good response. It worked in this format for me, and I had my question marks. It's different when you're on stage and kind of just answering
Sure.
questions or on a fireside chat. Then moved to digital recording and said, hey, this is great. I'm really learning a lot about the strategic partners we work with, the clients. I started getting inquiries from guests and podcast booking services. And I would then speak at events, and panelists would talk to me about being on the podcast. I get to learn so much more about them. I always have something to point to as well. So I've found a lot of value in it. And it's basically something I always want to do at this point. It's a very focused conversation and something that you're able to share the value points between two experts.
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's so much fun too. I don't know. I feel like it's always one of the highlights of my day when I get to do an interview or just create an episode because it's fun. You're passionate about the topic you're talking about. And I think it really comes across. And like you have been talking about, it really helps just establish your brand in a different way. And I guess I'm curious how often the clients that you work with are you advising that they start podcasts? Because I always feel like there's a few different approaches, right? Like you can guest on shows, which feels like really low-hanging fruit.
Mhm.
It's just a really good entry point. Of course, if you're working with a guest booking service, you're going to have to pay them, but you can get on some great shows and you can do it relatively low cost. And then, of course, there's advertising, which we love, and there's a lot of power to. But having your own show is also a really nice way, I think, to round out a brand and to round out your content creation. And just like all content creation, you can take it and, spin it off into so many different pieces. But what's your approach when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, great question. Because there's strong distinctions.
Hmm.
Guesting on different podcasts, almost more of a organic, where you're saying, hey, you're doing this so that people mid-funnel see you. Sure, you're going to tap into some different traffic sources from these different audiences, but what you do with the podcast to your audience and how that can show a lift on the conversion rate can mean a world of difference. Buying advertising. Now we're talking performance. You could look at traffic, you could look at metrics. You're going to have a lot more firepower there. And then starting your own podcast, I begin the discussion by stating it is a commitment. There are too many podcasters that do 8 episodes and give up. You really have to have that marketing plan for the podcast itself, treat it as its own brand. I
Hmm.
talked about the details of our approach, our formula for launching the podcast. I got a different type of attention once I hit about 30, 40 episodes.
Hmm.
Uh, became more of a target for guests, but also the people I spoke to in the audience more impressed. They took it more seriously. So I really tell someone, don't do this unless you're committed to, 30 or more episodes.
Hmm.
Your guest list, who you're going to be going out to from there, the value the audience is actually going to get, what's going to keep them coming back, subscribing, listening, viewing.
Hmm.
And then how are you going to market the podcast? Is it just going to your existing audience? If not, how are you growing that audience? How are you getting more views, more listens organically? Are you exploring paid? Do you have strategic partners? Are you going to be reaching out to different publishers to talk about you? How are you going to get it to those next levels? And I find some people are better equipped for it than others.
Sure.
Made a recommendation yesterday to a client that wants to do a podcast. They're really overseeing the marketing. And I said it may be a good idea for you to be on with the CEO because then you could control the conversation. When your guest, the host, does that, when it's your podcast, you need to make sure you're directing everything. So I go through all those considerations. It ends up appearing to be a lot more work than I think many people anticipate. And I think that weeds out those that would quit earlier. But if done correctly, you become the media publisher, you have your own platform, and it is a great asset.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think what is so tricky, and especially when you're talking about branded content, it's so important that you think about the audience. And I find that often brands hire these production companies, they pay them ungodly sums of money, in my opinion, to produce these shows. And the production company is like, I'm going to make you an amazing show. And it's an amazing show, but they don't have a good growth strategy. They don't have a marketing plan for the show. So it's like, okay, well, you just paid, $100,000 to have 10 episodes created. and no one's listening.
Hmm.
You've got like 20 downloads or something. And so it is really, really important, I think, creating that consistent content and then also really thinking about it like it's a micro business within your business. And as you said, you're creating a media channel for your organization. You're owning that content, you own the narrative. There's so much power in it, but it really does have to be kind of approached like it's its own micro business almost within your business. It sounds like that's kind of the approach you take.
100%. And I wouldn't be able to do it without my team. So
100%. I wouldn't be able to do it without my team either.
be a lot of work. Maybe, a different time in my life, but have our content marketing director, have our creative director involved in creating
Hmm.
thumbnails, creating video shorts, creating images for guests. So it makes it easier for them to share and get out to their audience. That could potentially grow your audience and just get more visibility around the discussion, around the high
Hmm.
impact content and moments that you're creating, what it means to do the coordination for a booking and screening and everything that is involved with guest selection, following up with guests, every bit about it. If you fall short, your audience is going to diminish over time. So,
Right.
love that you mentioned growth strategy. You should be testing different channels and doing more of what's working over time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, Jason, I know we need to start wrapping it up. I have a couple last questions for you. So,
Sure.
you've obviously done a fair bit of podcast advertisement placements. What mistakes do you think brands make when they place podcast ads?
Misconceptions around the mere appearance on a podcast or media campaign and assuming, hey, because we're going to be mentioned on this podcast or have an ad running to the audience, we're going to have this uncorrelated level of result for our primary marketing campaign. It really needs to fit into that larger marketing strategy. You have to
Hmm.
understand how traffic performs in your
Hmm.
funnel and look at it as a traffic source, not as, some type of savior or, hey, this is what's going to take my business to the next level, as much as this is how it's going to fit into our marketing model. And we're
Hmm.
going to measure the performance, whether it's branding, whether it's direct response, we're going to, put it through our numbers and do more of what's working. Often the diversification aspect isn't there as well too. Hey, we're going to try this with one podcast.
Yeah.
As a marketer, I would rather see, even if it's publisher direct, 3 to 5 different variants.
Yep.
Love the idea of ad networks where you're then able to look at the publishers, the podcasts that were really more effective, more powerful for you, and look to do more with them, even then go publisher direct from there. But
Hmm.
handling it as a media buying discussion versus just a PR conversation or content marketing, I think can make all of the difference.
Yeah, I agree 100%. How are you tracking results? Do you use pixels, promo codes? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, pixels,
Hmm.
depending on the placement and limitations, could look for promo codes. I find not everyone uses them.
Sure.
I think towards my personal life and e-commerce purchases and forgetting the code or where I sourced it and just moving forward with it because, we're busy. Um, Pixels have limitations as well too. It's not black and white. Performance
Hmm.
tracking and attribution is a big area of discussion with our clients and even how we schedule in our weekly reporting calls and what we're talking about, what we're able to see with mobile iOS users, what we're not able to see with iPhone users,
Hmm.
what we're able to tell from first click, last click, conversion windows, 7-day click, 1-day view for some different channels and some different pixels, others are 28. So it's looking at analytics to tell a story and determine where to optimize versus be a black and white concrete tracker.
Hmm.
I would say the same for affiliate codes or anything along those lines.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. If someone's interested in learning more about you or your company, where is a good place for them to connect with you?
Sure. You can go to digitalnicheagency.com. Can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at digital niche agency. See our podcast, our webinars. Uh, I'm on LinkedIn, Jason Fishman, DNA, Marina Del Rey, always open to a warm marketing discussion. And thanks for having me on, Heather. This has really been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation, and it's an honor to be talking about podcast advertising. I know you are an authority in the space, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. Jason has some really unique perspectives on really the whole approach. And I think one of the things he said that I loved the most was that podcast ads have to be part of your overall marketing strategy. So I hope that you've gotten some good takeaways from this episode, and I will catch you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your source to a better understanding of the podcast advertising industry.